There is a tiredness that does not come from work, but from being responsible for everyone else's emotions. And then, one day, that tiredness gives way to something else. Something quiet, something cold. It's not an aggressive coldness. It's not a decision to punish. It's a stillness, like a lake that has finally frozen over after a long, brutal winter. You look at the person who once caused a storm inside you, and you feel nothing. The phone can be silent for days, and the old panic is gone, replaced by a strange, hollow peace. And right behind that peace comes the voice, both from the outside and from within. They say, "You've changed. You've become so cold, so distant." And a part of you agrees. A wave of guilt washes over you, sharp and familiar. Because you, the empath, the feeler, the one who always understood, the one who always tried, you have become the one thing you never thought you could be, unresponsive. This coldness feels like a betrayal of your own identity. You look in the mirror and see a stranger. Where is the person who cried for others? Where is the warmth that people used to praise? The guilt tells you that you have failed, that you have become cruel, that you are the one who is now in the wrong. But this is only the surface story. It is the explanation that keeps you trapped. The deeper truth, the one that can actually set you free, is far more uncomfortable and profound. The coldness is not your failure. It is the final, desperate act of a psyche that has been pushed beyond its limits. And the guilt you feel is not your conscience speaking. It is the rattling of an old, invisible chain, a chain that has kept you bound to this dynamic for far too long. This is not about becoming a bad person. This is about the collapse of a persona that was slowly killing you. To understand this shift, we cannot stay with simple advice like, just set boundaries. You tried that. You tried explaining. You tried talking. You tried being more patient. And you tried being less patient. The problem is deeper. It lies in the unseen engine that powered the entire dynamic. From a Jungian perspective, what you are experiencing is not just burnout. It is the eruption of your shadow and the breakdown of a powerful, unconscious emotional program that Carl Jung called a complex. Specifically, a deeply embedded guilt complex. A complex is like a splinter in the psyche. It's a cluster of emotionally charged memories, thoughts, and feelings organized around a central theme. It operates autonomously, like a sub-personality. It can hijack your thoughts and dictate your reactions without your conscious permission. And for many who identify as empaths, the master program running in the background is a guilt complex. This complex wasn't created by your recent relationship. It was likely installed in childhood. It's the result of being taught, directly or indirectly, that your needs were a burden, that your anger was unacceptable, or that you were responsible for a parent's happiness. You learned early on that love and safety were conditional upon being good, quiet, and undemanding. The core belief of the guilt complex is, I am inherently flawed or too much. To be loved and to be safe, I must constantly prove my worth by giving, fixing, and absorbing the discomfort of others. Their happiness is my responsibility. Their pain is my fault. With this software running in your unconscious, you move through the world with an invisible antenna, constantly scanning for disapproval. You become exquisitely sensitive to the emotional states of others, not just out of pure compassion, but as a survival mechanism. This is the shadow side of empathy. It is an empathy driven by the fear of triggering your own core wound of guilt. Then, you encounter a person or a dynamic that feeds on this. A person with a narcissistic pattern doesn't need to be a genius of manipulation. They just need to be themselves. Their emotional instability, their need for constant validation, their inability to take responsibility, their subtle blame shifting, all of it is a perfect key for the lock of your guilt complex. When they are displeased, your complex doesn't just register it as their problem. It screams, "Alert! You have failed. You are not being good enough, understanding enough, giving enough. You must fix this now, or you will be abandoned and confirmed as unworthy." And so you do. You apologize for things you didn't do. You absorb their silent treatments and their moods, internalizing them as your own failure. You double your efforts, pouring more of your energy, your warmth, your life force into stabilizing their inner world, desperately trying to turn off the blaring alarm of your own guilt. You become the emotional caretaker of an unfillable void. You are praised for your patience, your kindness, your boundless understanding. You build an entire identity, a persona, around this role. You are the good one, the rescuer, the one who stays. This persona feels noble, it feels like love, but it is a mask, and beneath it, your own soul is starving. You are giving away bread while you are starving, and the guilt complex is telling you that this is the only way to deserve to live. This cycle can go on for years. Each time you try to pull back, to assert a need, or to express hurt, the dynamic punishes you. They withdraw, they rage, they sulk, they accuse you of being selfish, and each time, your guilt complex flares up, flooding your system with shame and fear, pulling you back in. The guilt is the chain. It is the invisible leash that keeps you circling the source of your pain, believing that if you just try harder, you can finally fix it and earn the peace you crave. But the human psyche, like the human body, has limits. You cannot run on adrenaline forever. You cannot give blood indefinitely without collapsing. The coldness you now feel is that collapse. It is not a conscious decision. It is a biological and psychological inevitability. It is the emergency shutdown of your emotional system. Your psyche, in an act of profound self-preservation, has finally blown a fuse to prevent the entire house from burning down. The coldness is the nervous system finally saying, I cannot. I cannot produce one more drop of cortisol to deal with manufactured chaos. I cannot generate one more spark of warmth for someone who treats it like fuel. I cannot feel one more surge of guilt for failing to meet an impossible standard. The well is dry. The emotional circuits are fried. This state is often misdiagnosed by the self and others as depression or apathy, but it is more specific than that. It is a form of psychic hibernation. Your system has finally understood, on a level deeper than conscious thought, that feeling is dangerous. Warmth is a resource that will be taken. Empathy is an open door that will be exploited. So, it closes the door. It turns down the thermostat. It freezes the lake. The pain of this is immense because it feels like you've lost yourself. But you haven't lost yourself. You have lost the mask. You have lost the role you were playing. The persona of the endlessly good and giving person has died of exhaustion, and you are left in the terrifying, silent space after its death. This is where the deepest level of the guilt complex activates. As you stand in this new, cold stillness, the complex launches its most vicious attack. It tells you, look what you've done. You promised to be there. You are abandoning them. You are being cruel. You are the monster now. Why does the guilt become so loud when you finally stop the self-sacrifice? Because you are threatening the complex's very existence. Its entire purpose is to keep you in the loop of overgiving to avoid the primal fear of abandonment and unworthiness. By going cold, you are stepping out of the loop. You are breaking the rule. The guilt is the system's desperate attempt to force you back into compliance. It is the prison guard screaming because the prisoner is no longer responding to orders. To heal, you must learn to see this guilt not as a moral compass, but as the noise of a malfunctioning program. It is not an indicator of objective truth. It is a conditioned, traumatic response. When you feel that wave of guilt for not replying to a message, for enjoying a moment of peace, for not rushing to solve their latest crisis, you must learn to say to yourself, this is not my conscience. This is the complex. This is the sound of the chain. The coldness is a boundary. It may be a clumsy, painful, and imperfect boundary, but it is a boundary nonetheless. It is a boundary made of exhaustion. It is your psyche screaming no in the only way it has left. Your job now is not to force yourself to be warm again. Your job is to respect this no, to sit with the coldness and listen to what it is protecting. Beneath the ice of this numbness lies a vast, unacknowledged ocean of your own feelings. This is your shadow. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is not evil. It is simply everything you have repressed and disowned about yourself. For the people-pleasing empath, the shadow contains terrifying things: rage, resentment, the desire to be left alone, the need for reciprocity, the fierce, unapologetic truth that says, "What about me?" For years, your persona of the good person has been sitting on this shadow, suppressing it. Now, the persona has cracked. The coldness is the shadow seeping through. It is the accumulated rage and grief of 1,000 self-betrayals, finally making its presence known, not as a hot explosion, but as a dead, cold weight. The path forward is not to get rid of the coldness, but to dare to feel what is underneath it. It means allowing yourself, perhaps for the first time, to acknowledge your anger without judging it, to admit the profound resentment you feel for having been used as an emotional utility, to grieve for the years, the energy, and the parts of yourself you lost in the service of someone else's ego. This is shadow work. It is painful. It is messy. It involves admitting that your pure empathy was entangled with a fear of not being good enough. It involves seeing that your unconditional love was often a desperate bid to manage your own anxiety. This is not about blaming yourself. It is about taking radical responsibility for your own inner world. It is about seeing the whole picture, the light and the dark, so that you can finally become whole. If this journey of understanding names something you have felt, but have never been able to say out loud, consider writing a single sentence for yourself in the comments. A private declaration of what you are starting to see. This is not for anyone else. It is an anchor for your own awareness. As you begin to integrate this shadow, the coldness will change. It will not simply vanish, returning you to the old, porous, vulnerable warmth. That would not be healing. It would be regression. Instead, the ice will begin to thaw, but the lake will have new shores. The coldness will slowly transform into conscious discernment. You will learn the difference between authentic compassion and the compulsive need to fix. You will learn that you can love someone without being responsible for their soul's journey. You will learn that your peace does not require their approval. Your warmth will return, but it will no longer be an open-access public utility. It will be a fire in your own hearth, one that you share deliberately and wisely with those who respect it and bring their own wood. This process is what Carl Jung called individuation. It is the journey of becoming a psychologically whole and distinct individual, separate from the unconscious roles and complexes that once defined you. It is about withdrawing your projections from others and finding your own center, your own authority, your own self. This painful breakdown, this turning cold, is often a brutal but necessary catalyst for that journey. You were so enmeshed with another that your psyche had to stage a dramatic severing to save you. So, when they accuse you of being cold, you can learn to hear it differently. It is not an accusation, it is an observation. Yes, you are cold. You are cold to manipulation. You are cold to emotional blackmail. You are cold to the expectation that you exist to regulate their nervous system. This coldness is the shield behind which your true self is recovering. It is the silence in which you can finally hear your own voice. Do not be afraid of this silence. Do not rush to fill it. The person you were is gone, and that is a grief that must be honored. But the person you are becoming is being born out of this stillness. A person who is still kind, but whose kindness no longer requires self-betrayal. A person who is still empathetic, but whose empathy is now protected by wisdom and strong fences. The guilt will fade. It will lose its power as you continue to unmask it, to see it for the ghostly echo of an old wound that it is. One day, you will feel a flicker of warmth for another person, and you will not be afraid. You will know that you can share that warmth without giving yourself away, because you have finally come home to yourself. The cold was not the end. It was the beginning of a quiet, powerful, and authentic life. My kindness no longer requires my self-abandonment, but this recognition is often where the real battle begins. The body itself holds the memory of the trauma, and its response is not symbolic. It is physiological. This coldness is written in your biology. You might notice your breathing has become shallower, as if your body is trying to take in less of the world. When you receive a text message that once would have sent a jolt of anxiety through you, you now feel a strange and profound physical stillness. There is no knot in your stomach. There is no racing heart. It feels like watching a storm through a thick pane of soundproof glass. You might even experience a kind of somatic paralysis when you try to perform the old rituals of reassurance. You think, I should write something comforting, but your fingers feel heavy, refusing to type the familiar words of placation. This is not a conscious choice to be withholding. It is your body's memory intervening. It is the cellular level memory of a million moments where your warmth was consumed without reciprocity. Your nervous system is now enforcing a boundary that your conscious mind could not. It is moved from a fight or flight response, which you sustained for years, into a freeze state, a deep, protective conservation of energy. It has decided, on your behalf, that the cost of engagement is too high. It has unplugged you from the source of the power drain. During this phase, the guilt complex will not go quietly. In fact, it will launch its most sophisticated and desperate attacks. It will whisper insidious rationalizations, custom-tailored to your deepest fears. Thoughts like, they are in so much pain. No one else understands them like I do. If I abandon them now, something terrible might happen, and it will be my fault. Or, maybe this time will be different. Maybe they've finally seen the light. I am the only one who can help them heal. These are not your thoughts. These are the arguments of the complex, fighting for its own survival. It is trying to frame your self-preservation as an act of profound cruelty. It paints a picture of their desolation, positioning you as their sole savior, because your identity as the savior is the cornerstone of the complex itself. To see through this, you must recognize these thoughts for what they are: the ghost in the machine, the echo of the old programming trying to reboot the system. Healing requires you to observe these thoughts without obeying them, to let them pass through you like clouds, without letting them rain on you. And as you hold this new, cold boundary, something remarkable begins to happen in the unseen world of your psyche. The energy that you were pouring into the black hole of the other person's needs starts to pool within you. At first, it feels like nothing, just the cold numbness. But this is the fallow ground where healing begins. Here, you finally have the space to do the real work, integrating your shadow. The rage and resentment you disowned for so long are not poisons to be expelled. They are pure, misdirected life force. The rage you felt was the voice of your own dignity, screaming to be honored. The resentment was the record of every time your yes to them was a no to yourself. To integrate this shadow is not to become an angry, resentful person. It is an alchemical process. The raw, chaotic energy of that repressed rage, once acknowledged and owned, transforms into clear, calm assertiveness. It becomes the power to say no without apology. The energy of that deep resentment transforms into discernment, the wisdom to recognize which people are worthy of your time and energy. Your shadow, once brought into the light, becomes your greatest ally. The part of you that you once judged as selfish is reborn as healthy self-respect. The part you feared was cruel becomes the courage to protect your peace. You are not destroying the empath in you. You are finally giving her a spine and a shield. How do you know this transformation is real? How do you know you are healing, not just hardening? There are concrete inner signs. The first sign is the quality of your no. It is no longer fraught with anxiety, defensiveness, or followed by a tidal wave of guilt. It becomes a simple, quiet, and neutral fact. No, I am not available for that. End of sentence. There is no emotional charge because there is no longer an internal war. You have aligned with your own truth. The second sign is the return of spontaneous, simple joy. One day, you will be drinking your morning coffee, and you will suddenly become aware of its taste and warmth, and nothing else. The constant, low-grade hum of anxiety about the other person's state of mind is simply gone. You might hear a song and feel a genuine, uncomplicated flicker of happiness. This is your nervous system telling you that it is safe to come back online, that it is safe to feel pleasure for yourself again. The third, and perhaps most profound sign, is the evolution of your empathy. You will encounter someone else in pain, and you will feel a genuine, warm compassion for them. But the compulsive urge to dive into their pain, to merge with it, to fix it, will be absent. You can feel for them without feeling as them. You can offer support without taking on their burden as your own. This is differentiated empathy, the empathy of a whole person, not the enmeshed empathy of a codependent complex. And then, inevitably, comes the late practical test. It may be months or even years later. The person from your past, or someone with a strikingly similar pattern, will reappear. They might send a message on your birthday. They might reach out with news of a crisis, appealing to the old rescuer role. They might even offer a beautifully crafted apology that seems to acknowledge everything you ever wanted to hear. In the past, this would have been a hook that went straight into your heart. A surge of hope, pity, or obligation would have flooded your system. But now, something is different. You read the message, or you hear the voice, and you observe. You feel a quiet stillness in your body. Your mind is clear. You can see the move on the chessboard for what it is. You might feel a pang of sadness, a gentle grief for the connection you once hoped for. But the agonizing, compulsive pull is gone. The chain has been broken. Your response, whether it is a polite and distant refusal or a simple, profound silence, comes not from a place of cold revenge, but from a place of deep, embodied wisdom. Passing this test isn't about proving them wrong. It's the quiet, personal confirmation that you are finally, irrevocably, free. You are no longer a player in their game. This journey from the frozen lake of numbness to a flowing river with strong, defined banks is the essence of individuation. The coldness was not a failure or a character flaw. It was a chrysalis. It was the sacred, protective space your psyche had to create for you to undergo a total metamorphosis. The person who emerges is not a lesser, colder version of who you were. They are a more complete one. The warmth you feel now is your own. It is generated from your own core, and you share it not as a desperate bid for love, but as a deliberate gift. Your empathy, once a source of constant wounding, has become your superpower, guided now by the wisdom of your integrated shadow. You did not lose your heart, you took it back. And in the quiet stillness that follows the long storm, you learn to trust its new, steady, and resilient rhythm. It beats now, finally, for you.